Hello, everybody. It's Disney Chris here. Long time no here. I waited an extra week to create this vlog because I didn't have as much to report on last Friday as I would normally like to have to say when I do one of these vlogs. So I decided to wait an extra week so that I would have more to report on. I hope nobody was inconvenienced by the fact that I had no vlog last week. I'm going to try to do them every 2 weeks, but if I ever skip a week, that's probably because I was busy doing other projects and I didn't have enough time to add a lot of new content to the site, and so I prefer to wait when I have more to say. So that being said, I do have quite a bit to report on today, and first of all, it's the first day of my Easter Song of the Day, so from today, March 23rd, up until April 1st, I'll be featuring a Disney song with an Easter theme every day. Today's song is Funny Little Bunnies from the Mickey's Toontown area loop, which is based on the song Funny Little Bunnies from a 1934 Silly Symphony, probably the only Easter-themed cartoon that Disney ever made that's specifically Easter. So that's a great song to kick off the Easter countdown to Easter Song of the Day with. So that being said, let's talk a little bit about what's been going on with the Disneyland Magical Audio Tour. First of all, I think I mentioned this in my last vlog that I had completed Chapter 20, Disneyland After Dark. This chapter is 100% done for now. If I ever get any additional audio or anything that I don't currently have, then of course there would be new additions added. But as far as everything I have my hands on at this point, everything has been edited and posted to this chapter that is relevant to the theme of Disneyland After Dark. So if you haven't checked out this chapter yet, or if you haven't checked it out in a little while, be sure to check it out because everything is now available on this page. There's no more coming soons. They're all either new or they've been there a while. So the only indicators is new, like Skiles and Henderson is new. I talked about what this track is in my last vlog, so if you want more information on Skiles and Henderson, check out my vlog from earlier this month. Now let's talk about the other chapter that's kind of a sister chapter to Disneyland After Dark, known as Disneyland Bandstand. Originally, Disneyland After Dark included all of this, but it got to be such a monster that I eventually had to split it up into 2 chapters, and I logically did that by including just on this chapter live groups, specifically live bands. So this chapter is still in progress, but I did add a couple new things to it since my last update. These 2 tracks down here, which are marked new, are new since my last update, and I have completed my entire country music section of this page now. I'm going to provide a track list to Ruth, who does the corresponding notes for these vlogs, and she'll post the notes in the notes, the names of all these different songs. I'll also go ahead and send her the names for the other 2 tracks which I had already completed earlier. Danny Davis and the Nashville Brass is just one band, and it's all they were like kind of like a big band, but they played all country songs, and they performed mostly at the Plaza Gardens, but they're kind of unique because they have a distinctive country western style, even though it's a big brass band. So it's not really necessary to provide a track list for this because it's all the same group. But for more Legends of Country, Country Music Spectacular, and Country Music Jubilee, I will provide her with a track list so you can check that out when the notes get posted. Usually a couple days after the video is posted, I add the show notes to my website, so you can look for it there. I still have quite a bit to do on this chapter, mainly my Big Bands in Disneyland section, which is all music recorded at Disneyland at the Plaza Gardens for a 1984 Disney Channel television special. I need to edit all that. And I have another section of big bands, which is all the other groups that didn't appear on the TV special. Most of that still needs to get done. And then the other section I have to still do is I have several tracks in my Tomorrowland Terrace, which are kind of the contemporary groups that are performing there now or recently. That needs to get done still. So this chapter has a lot of work left. And I would have gotten a lot more of it done, but I got sidetracked on yet another project, and that is this page. Now, this is a chapter that has been on my site for some time now. I added it last December when I, like the Disneyland After Dark and Disneyland Bandstand chapters, originally I had all of the holidays, including Christmas, on one chapter. But I ended up adding so much Christmas content that it became way too much for one page. So I decided to keep Christmas as a separate chapter and then put all the other holidays other than Christmas on their own page. So that's what this chapter is about. It's called Holiday Time in Disneyland, basically celebrating all the holidays except for Christmas. So I added some new additions to this chapter, and I switched things around a little bit. One thing I'm going to start doing with this chapter is I'm going to start putting the most recent holiday at the top of the page and then putting the holiday that just ended at the bottom and kind of work my way around so that, see, I put St. Patrick's Day down at the bottom now because that just happened. So then Valentine's is bumped up one notch, New Year's is bumped up a notch, etc., etc. So eventually, in October, Halloween will end up at the top, and 4th of July and Easter will get bumped down to the bottom. So it'll be a rotation from now on. So whenever you go to the holiday page, depending on what time of year it is, you'll find the most recent holiday or the most soon-to-come holiday at the top of the page, with two exceptions. These two tracks will always be the first two tracks because they're sort of a lead-in to the chapter. They kind of encompass the theme of all holidays. So the first of these being a song called Happy Holidays. This is from a 1958 Disneyland record called Holidays with the Mouseketeers, and it's sort of the lead song to this album, which is all about all the different holidays of the year. And even though it's not a song that ever played in the park, it just sort of has the theme that I'm going for this chapter. So I made an artistic choice, used some artistic license, and I decided to kick off the chapter with this track, even though it's not really Disneyland specific. It is a Disney song, and it was on Disneyland Records. So the second song is Every Day's a Holiday in Disneyland USA, which is a Sherman Brothers song, which they wrote very early in their workings with Walt Disney as a song for The Wonderful World of Color, an episode also coincidentally called Holiday Time in Disneyland, which aired in 1962. And this is basically just a tour of the park through music, and it's about a 3-minute whirlwind tour of Disneyland as it was in 1962, and it talks about each themed land. And it's not really a holiday song per se, but they mention throughout the song Every Day's a Holiday in Disneyland USA, so I decided it would be cute to include that as part of this chapter, since it's does say every day's a holiday, which is also the kind of theme that I'm going with this chapter. So then, again, I bumped Easter up because Easter's in just a little bit over a week now. I bumped Easter up to the top of the page. And in addition, I added a brand new track for Easter, which I just posted late last night. I wanted to get it done before I created this video today, so I would have some exciting news to report on. And the news is that I added this terrific new track that I created with all sorts of songs that will have sort of an Easter or springtime theme that can be heard throughout Disneyland, including barbershop quartet music, player piano music, Coke Corner ragtime, and some of the area music that you hear throughout the park that sort of has a springtime or flower theme to it. Little April Shower, Easter Parade, When the Red, Red Robin Goes Bob, Bob, Bobbing Along. Those type of songs are all included in this nice little 40-minute mix. It was a lot of work for this one. I kind of had to scour the internet to find appropriate songs. It was hard to find Easter songs, really. There's not a lot of recordings of good Easter songs that aren't like vintage recordings, and I didn't want vintage like old gramophone record recordings. I wanted, modern sounding hi-fi recordings. So it was a little bit of a challenge, but I'm really happy with how this turned out. I put a lot of work into it, so if you haven't checked this track out yet, I think you would enjoy it. So I did add a lot of new slots for new tracks in the other holidays as well. I'll quickly go over what those are. Some of them I've already added. Some of them are marked as coming soon. And I want to kind of get this chapter done. There's only 12 tracks I have to add. They're already all set up for final editing. Everything's ready to go. It just has to be final edited. And I've already added several new ones, as I just said. So most of the new ones I added already existed on other chapters, but they're new to this chapter. I kind of decided to also include some additional things from other chapters that are holiday related. So one of those is the Sadie Mae, which is the band organ that was actually used to record the music for the 1976 America on Parade. It's the actual band organ that they used, and I have all of the music from that band organ that they used in the parade, but this is the unaltered version because the parade version added in a lot of synthesizer and electronic music as sort of a backup to the Sadie Mae. But now I have also the version of just the Sadie Mae with no additional sound effects or electronic music added. So you can listen to both and compare. I'm going to be adding a patriotic medley of Dapper Dans, and a lot of times when I classify something as the Dapper Dans, it's not authentically them. I usually will find other barbershop groups that sound very similar to the Dapper Dans, and I use them as to represent them for different things, and this is going to be one of them. I found a group that sounds a lot like the Dapper Dans singing 3 patriotic songs, and I'm going to use that to represent the Dapper Dans, even though it really isn't them, but it sounds like them, so, and it's songs that they would sing, so close enough, right? So sometimes I don't have enough space to put coming soon because the title is too long. So in that case, I just sometimes put soon or coming. That's what that's all about. But another thing is I realized that on certain holidays, especially the 4th of July, Disneyland welcomes different military bands to perform live in the park, and I had not represented this yet. So I'm going to represent that for the 4th of July, and I put together a really nice medley of patriotic songs performed by different Army bands, officially from official albums by Army bands, so it's the real deal. And it's actual bands that have performed in Disneyland, so this is pretty authentic, even though they're studio recordings, not live recordings, but they are the actual bands that have performed in the park, so that's coming soon. Another track that's coming soon is a patriotic grand finale, which I'm just going to take 4 different versions of the ending to Fantasy in the Sky and also the Disneyland Forever fireworks from the 60th anniversary. that were used as kind of the grand finale. Now, most of these were used on a daily basis. They always ended with a patriotic finale, but the Disneyland Forever never ended with a patriotic finale, except for during the 4th of July. They added a patriotic tag at the end of the presentation, so I'm also including that here. So this is basically 4 versions of the fireworks show, grand finales all combined as a little mix. Celebrate the Spirit, Disney's All-Star 4th of July, was a television program that aired every year from beginning, I think, in 1988 and up till the mid-90s. They used to do, now they still have the Christmas parade, but they used to also do a 4th of July and an Easter every year, a live program on TV. The 4th of July one was always called Disney's All-Star 4th of July, and in the beginning it was only broadcasted from Walt Disney World, but after a few years they simulcasted with Disneyland, so you saw segments from both parks, Florida and California. And one of the traditions on this program was to have the singer Sandy Patty perform a live fireworks finale. She sung it live with an orchestra as the fireworks went off for the 4th of July. So I am including that here. I have a recording of her performing that, which was part of that television special for several years, so that's going to be included now. Celebrate America pre-show music. The current 4th of July fireworks, which they kind of usually bring back every year, is called Celebrate America, a 4th of July concert in the sky. I've always had that on this website, but I'm adding some pre-show music that they play as crowds are waiting for the show to begin. I have a little loop of songs that they actually play while you're waiting for the fireworks, so I'm going to add that as well. So, Halloween, I added a few tracks, not too many to Halloween, but a few. One thing I've already added is the side A of the classic Disneyland record, Chilling Thrilling Sounds of the Haunted House. This was already on my Disneyland Records chapter, but I decided to also include it in my Halloween section because it's really considered kind of a big part of Halloween. I mean, it's kind of a tradition to play this record at Halloween time, and it has been for decades. So, and it is Disneyland related, so I decided to include it here as well as the Disneyland Records chapter. So that's a new addition. Coming soon, Haunted Mansion Holiday Scream Along. Now, somebody contacted me about a week ago and pointed out to me that there was a video on YouTube with this audio for the Scream Along, and I listened to it, and it was something I realized I didn't already have on my site, so I took the audio from YouTube, and then I realized that all along I actually had this audio in my files, but I neglected to use it. I think what it was is I assumed the way it was titled, the file was titled, it was part of this track, the area background music, the holiday scarols. I thought it was all part of the same thing, but now I've realized this is something completely different. It played the same year that the scarols played, but what this is, it's the ghost host kind of giving instructions for the audience to scream every time they hear a tag of grim grinning ghosts going through the attraction, and it's kind of, as you're waiting to go in, it's kind of giving you the instructions on how to participate in what they're calling the Scream Along. So I'm going to be adding that track very soon. In fact, most of these are going to get added very soon. I'm going to work on this chapter first before I go back to the Disneyland Bandstand chapter. Another track I'm going to add, which is something I originally wanted to include, but decided to leave it out because I couldn't find good audio for it, was the Villains Victory Party. This is interesting. This was a special promotion in 2010 that I think it was publicized in newspapers and on radio ads in Southern California, and it wanted people to vote for their favorite Disney villain, And in addition, they had a trivia contest, and I think it was also available on the internet as well. You could participate online. They wanted you to participate in a trivia contest, and if you got all the answers right, you went into a drawing, and then you could win a free special ticket to Disneyland for the special event where they were going to reveal who won the vote for the villain's victory party. And of course, Maleficent won. Maleficent. I always say it wrong. I always say Maleficent, but it's Maleficent. She won the honor of the favorite Disney villain. And they had a whole ceremony on Tom Sawyer's Island where the people who won the tickets got prime seating, prime viewing locations, and then of course everybody else in the park got to participate and watch the event as well. And I have a live recording of this. However, the audio is not the best, so I was going to leave it out, but then I kind of figured out some of the songs that were included in the live event. So I have two songs. One of the songs I could not find, but there were basically 3 songs used, and I have 2 of the 3, so I'm gonna add that. They're they're studio recorded versions of what was played during the live show. So I am going to be able to include this now. So I put it back in. It was there before. I took it out, and now it's back again. So Thanksgiving is nothing new is getting added for Thanksgiving. New Year, I have a couple things I'm going to add. First of all, I'm going to add the Auld Lang Syne ending to America Sings as a separate thing, but I'm also going to include a disco version of Auld Lang Syne as kind of a little mix with the two together, and it's a lot of fun. Another New Year from the Country Bear Christmas Special, which was performed by Big Al. I'm going to add that as a separate thing for New Year's. And then down here, I'm adding two new. I've already added one, and then I have 2 more I need to add. The Tournament of Roses Parade, the Royal Court. This was already on my parade chapter, but I decided to also include it on this chapter. And I have I found some audio actually of the 1966 Tournament of Roses Parade when Walt Disney was Grand Marshal, and I'm going to be using that little piece of audio with some additional music and sound effects, and I created an interesting little 1-minute long thing to represent the year Walt Disney was Grand Marshal. And then I'm also going to include the Tournament of Roses Honor Band. Now, apparently, in addition to participating in the Tournament of Roses, this band traditionally also performs at Disneyland before and after the Rose Parade. Several times they'll participate kind of as a pre-show, sometimes to the Christmas parade and whatnot. So I'm going to include them, and I found some songs which are kind of perfect for this, one of them being Everything's Coming Up Roses, as a march, so as a big marching band version of that song. So I'm going to include a little medley of parade songs to represent the Tournament of Roses Honor Band, who apparently, and I didn't realize this until I did a little more research, they do actually have kind of a long tradition with Disneyland, and they've been performing in the park for years. It's new members every year. They choose them from local college and high school students, but every year this band that is formed new every year performs in the park. So in addition to just performing for the one parade, they also get to kind of be a part of Disneyland for a little while, which is kind of fun, and kind of excited to be able to include that. For the St. Patrick's Day, I have 2 new things. One thing I added is the 1955 little golden record of The Little Man of Disneyland, which has kind of a St. Patrick's theme because the main character is a leprechaun in this little story. And so I decided to include that, which I had not had on this. It was always on my Disneyland Records chapter, but now I've also decided to include it on as my St. Patrick's Day section. I kind of forgot about it. The other thing is, originally I had Coke Corner and the Dapper Dan's combined as one track. I decided to split these up into 2 tracks, so now the Coke Corner Irish Ragtime Medley is a separate thing. And I still need to, I'm adding a few new songs for the Dapper Dans, Irish songs, so I still need to edit this. I didn't get it done in time for St. Patrick's Day, unfortunately, but now I have a whole year to get it done. So at the bottom of the page, this will always be the last 3 tracks, because they just kind of, there's no specific dates because all 3 of these happen at different times of the year. And these are 3 different international festivals, and these have already been on the site, but now there'll always be the last 3. So the first 2 tracks will always be the same, and the last 3 will always be the same, but the other tracks are going to switch around depending on what time of year it is. I think that makes things a little bit more convenient to find if you're looking for specific songs for the time of year that you're celebrating. One other thing I need to point out is I have finished another new chapter. I only had 1 track I needed to add, but I added it and now it's done, and that's Disneyland Records, which I mentioned a few times already. But Disneyland Records is basically, it's kind of a play on words because the name of the in-house recording label that Disney used for decades was called Disneyland Records, even though it didn't necessarily have anything to do with the park. They just kind of used that as the moniker to talk about all sorts of different things, because this record label was formed around the same time Disneyland opened, so they just started calling everything Disneyland back then. Like the television show was called Disneyland, the record label was called Disneyland, everything was Disneyland, whether it was the park or not. So it can be a little confusing, and but what I'm using this name for is to represent actual records that are about the park itself. Some of them are Disneyland records, and some of them are other labels, but what they all have in common is they all are about, they're all vinyl recordings, old school vinyl records that somehow represented Disneyland, the park itself. And again, here's that Walt Disney's Little Man of Disneyland on this chapter. But what I added that's new is track number 3. This is called Your Trip to Disneyland on Records. This is a really special track because these were 5 little discs that were on cardboard that came in this little set. You cut out the little cardboards and played them on a regular record player. And because they were cardboard with a layer of vinyl on top of the cardboard, the quality of a lot of these old records that can be found is really poor. So I ended up actually using some of the money that has been generously donated to DisneyChris.com. I used some of that money over the years, I'm saying. I used some of that accumulation of money about a year, 2 years, maybe about, it's been a while, maybe 2 years ago, I actually purchased an unopened, steel factory sealed copy of this album, Your Trip to Disneyland on Records. And I sent it to a friend in California who has all this professional recording equipment to actually record the records. I gave him permission to open the set up, cut out the records. I even sent him a special tool to cut out perfect circles. And I sent him a brand new needle to record the specific type of speed that these albums are supposed to be played in. And he recorded them for me. It took him a while to get around to it because he had so much going on in his life, but finally, about 3 weeks ago, he sent me the recordings. It took about 2 years for him to send them to me, but he did get around to sending them to me, and I dropped everything as soon as I got them, and I got this track finally done so I could put a period on my Disneyland Records chapter, because everything on the chapter had been done for a couple years, and I was just waiting to add this one final track to finish off the chapter. So anyway, there was a lot of issues. Even though it was brand new, it was something that was over 60 years old, and it was cardboard with vinyl on it, and even if it's sealed, it would, air is going to get in there and distort things. So it wasn't perfect, but it was definitely an improvement over all the other recordings I have heard of this album. And using the software I use to edit and clean audio, I was able to do a pretty stellar job of cleaning this up and making it. I'm going to say it's probably the best version you'll be able to hear that's out there. If a version of this exists that's not on vinyl, but the original master recordings, of course that would be better, but I don't know if those even still exist. They may not. So this is probably the best version you're going to be able to hear of this, and I worked really hard to get it just so perfect. I took out a lot of distortions and different issues that the record had. It still had a lot of scratches, and I was able to pretty much take all that out, background hiss and noise and all sorts of things. So I worked really hard, really proud of this one. So be sure to check that out on my Disneyland Records chapter, which is now 100%, at least for now, completed. Because, as I said, my holiday time in Disneyland chapter was done, but now I've added, 15 new tracks to that chapter. So nothing is ever completely done when it comes to this website. So you can take that to the bank. It's always going to be an ongoing process. So I hope everybody has a wonderful Easter. I'll talk to you in a couple weeks. And be sure to check out all the new tracks on my site. And be sure to check out my Patreon and become a donator to DisneyChris.com if you haven't already. Every little bit helps. If all you can pledge is $1 a month, that's terrific. So think about supporting what I do. I do spend the money that as I just pointed out, a couple things that I spent quite a bit of money on. This particular track cost me in the triple digits to get this done. So I do use the money that is sent to me for good things for the site. So consider becoming a donor. And I will talk to you all later. Bye-bye.